Well, hello everyone. Welcome to our December Slow Flowers member meetup. It's an exciting day here. We're back by popular demand. We have an amazing session talking about amazing new, I said amazing twice now, three times, seed introductions for flower lovers from our friends at Johnny Seeds. I'm so excited that we're having this session. And before I introduce our guests, I just want to give a little background. Again, we have our monthly member meetups. They've been really special. And last year in December, we invited Hillary Alger and Joy Longfellow from the flower team at Johnny Seeds to introduce their new seed introductions for 2024. This was our single most popular session of all of last year. The video from that session has been viewed 5,000 times on YouTube. It's mind blowing. There's so much interest and so much hunger in what kind of seed options people have, from gardeners to flower farmers to farmer florists to florists. We all want to know what's hot and what's new. And the hot takes are always an improvement on something we probably are familiar with. So, anyway, but back by popular demand, we asked Joy and Hillary to come today, and they're going to give us a presentation. And we have a bonus guest, Lindsay Wyatt, who is heads one of the breeding teams at Johnny's, who is going to tell us the story of the new selections that are Johnny's exclusives among zinnias and celosia. So we're going to learn a lot today. So right now, I'm going to go ahead and introduce two of our presenters for the first portion of our session, and that is Joy Longfellow and Hillary Alger. Hi, ladies. It's so good to see you both.
Hi, Deborah.
Hi,
Thanks for having
Deborah.
us.
Can you believe a year has passed since we did this before?
No. Mm.
I know we're all deep in it and busy. And I know Johnny's is very busy at this time of year, not only with the introductions, but your catalog has dropped, and that takes months to develop your catalog, right?
Catalog has dropped. We're promoting products and doing product education like we're doing here today. And also we're deep in planning for the next growing season. So
Oh my gosh.
there's no breaks.
Well, I know you're based in Winslow, Maine, and I know that you grow flowers through the winter, so there is no rest. These are you're Troy, you're always trialing overwintering varieties, right?
Yeah, we have our overwintered tunnel trial in the ground and underway right now. So we're keeping an eye on that. And then, like Hillary said, we've already kind of launched into all the planning for the spring flower crops too. So they're
Oh,
right around the corner.
awesome. All right. I am going to go ahead and turn over the screen to the two of you, and we're going to dive into new flower seed introductions for 2025. You all can take notes, but guess what? This will be rebroadcast next week for our viewing audience on YouTube and also the Slow Flowers podcast. So we'll edit it a little bit, but it's going to be out there in the world, getting people excited about planning, because now is the time to plan and get your seed orders in. So Hillary and Joy, thank you both so much, and we'll look at your new variety highlights for 2025.
Great. Thanks for having us. I'll just start by saying we have over 40 new to Johnny's varieties on the website. We're not going to talk about all of those today. We want to have some time for nice questions and discussions and for Lindsay to talk a little bit about breeding program, but we are going to go through a lot of new varieties. So I guess if there's something you were hoping to hear about that we don't cover, pop it in the chat and Joy and I can answer questions at the end. So right into new to Johnny's varieties. The first one is Blossom Pearl agrostema. It's a soft pink agrostema. We at Johnny's we carried a really similar variety probably 15 years ago, and it was discontinued by the seed supplier. And we've been looking for a while to track down a good source for consistent seed availability and good quality. And we finally found one. So it's Blossom Pearl. I would say the sort of field performance of this variety is very comparable to the other white and pink agrostomas in our assortment. So um, really similar productivity and stem length. I know agrostoma is not the sturdiest cut flower, but it is really elegant, and this pale pink color really can be something special for design work. We have a lot of pale pink this year, so sorry to folks who want to move beyond blush. We have a lot. Um, but this is a really nice aster. It has that pale pink color. It has large blooms in that sort of mum shaped bloom form. And sort of best of all, it had really strong trial performance in Joy's trial. So the plant stayed nice, tall, healthy plants, stayed healthy through the season, um, consistently over a few years of trialing. Asters can be really challenging in terms of the disease and um, insect pressure. But this one, relative to some of the other genetics, stayed really healthy throughout the season.
Thanks, Hillary. So this variety is Shimmer, and this is a really exciting new addition to our Celosia assortment. And we're thrilled to introduce Shimmer as the first Celosia from the Johnny's flower breeding program. Work on this variety began in 2016, and after many rounds of selection, we're excited to offer this new mix. Shimmer offers a range of colors in shades of peach, pink, gold, and wheat, and with wide, airy plumes. In terms of the plant habit, it's a vigorous variety, tall, early to flower. This has consistently been one of the earliest varieties to flower in our trials. And in terms of growing it, the plants respond well to pinching, and pinching is encouraged for this variety um, to to be able to get multiple cuts across the growing season. There can be a small percentage of off types in the flower form with a thin, a little bit more of a frizzy flower head, but most plants will present that classic plume shape. And then next slide, Hillary. And then one other thing, you may see a little bit of variation in color intensity depending on the time of year when it is grown. So these are two photos here on this slide from two different plantings of shimmer at different times in the season. So on the right is a spring planting that's flowering during the summer under um, kind of midsummer flowering, high temperatures and long days. You can see the flower colors a little bit lighter there. And then on the left of the slide is that's a planting that's summer planted and it's maturing a little bit later in the summer and into the fall. This photo is from mid-September. So these blooms are maturing under a little bit cooler temperatures and decreasing day length, and we're seeing a little bit more of a saturated flower color there. So that's just something to keep in mind. You might see some variation in that color range depending on when you're growing it, but um, you should still expect that nice plume shape and a really nice color range as well. So we have another plume type celosia that's getting added to the assortment. This variety is a new addition to the Sunday celosia series. So the Sunday series, these are known for their uniform plume-shaped flowers and a really nice, productive, branching, upright plant habit. The Sunday series has a nice range of bright, bold colors, and this is another bright, bold color to add to that series. So um, the while the flower form and the plant habit, the upright plant habit, the sturdy stems are consistent with the rest of the series, this variety differs just a little bit. So if you're growing this, you'll see Sunday Bright Orange. It'll be a bit taller than the other Sunday varieties. And it also flowers a little bit later than the rest of the series. So in our trials, it was blooming about 7 to 14 days later than the other Sundays, depending on the planting. So the taller plants, that's a great great improvement. They'd definitely be beneficial to cut flower growers. And then again, it brings the uniformity and consistency with the rest of the Sunday series, but just a little bit of um, a later flowering time. And then you can see in this slide too, there is a Sunday orange in the Sunday series. So on the left side, you can see the current Sunday orange, a little bit darker, more saturated color. And then on the right is the Sunday bright orange. You can see it's a little bit lighter and a really nice true orange. And then we have one more celosia to add to the assortment this year. This is Prince Rose. This is a crested or coxcomb type celosia. This is, if you're familiar with the Chief series, this is very comparable in terms of the plant habit and plant form to the Chief series. It's a celosia cristata. That's the species name. So these are characterized by these really densely packed, almost fist-shaped crested blooms, really different flower form than the plumosa types, the previous two varieties. But this variety stood out in trial for the bright magenta color on those blooms. It's really almost like an electric fuchsia color. And then supported by dark red stems and those purple leaves. It was just a really striking and dramatic color combination that doesn't exist in the current Chief series. So it's a new and different color. It may not blend with every color palette, but when it shows up, it's definitely going to show up. And in terms of growing this variety, it has a branching habit and does respond well to pinching. So what that means in terms of, the flower form, if you are looking for really large, like 3 to 6 inch sort of showstopper focal flower type blooms, then leaving the plants unpinched will result in a larger flower size. The plants will just produce one large, like a tall central stem with a large bloom, and then multiple shorter, smaller side shoots. If you are looking for more, like a little bit of a smaller flower size that's a little bit more versatile, then pinching the plants will kind of balance out that plant habit, and you'll have multiple stems that are a little bit shorter with smaller blooms. So it just it depends on what you're looking for, how you'll choose to manage that.
I have a couple Lysianthus to talk about. So the first one is Corelli Pink 2. And you can see that's the photo to the right. We selected it because of its sort of lightly ruffled petal shape and really soft, again, soft pink color. The thing that made the variety stand out for us is that it has a a light center. So by comparison, in the photo on the left, Corelli Light Pink 3, you can see has also a really soft pink petal color and a ruffle, but it has that cranberry center color that really contrasts with the petal color. Where this Corelli Pink 2 is just sort of overall has a really soft look to it. So that's sort of what made it different for us. It is a group 2, so best suited for winter and early spring sowing and sort of earlier summer harvest. With group 2s, you want to make sure that you do sow the seeds earlier, um, or what could happen is that the plants they bloom faster, so you could end up with shorter stems if you're planting those seeds a little bit too late in the season. So a benefit of a group 2 is early flowering, but you have to be careful to plant early for the long stem length. Next up is Corelli Segoy White. This is a group 3, and Corelli Segoy series is different from the Corelli series in that Corelli Segoy has more petals and a much heavier ruffling to the petal shape. And This is a pretty, we selected this one because of its overall good performance and then simply for the reason that it's a really clear, clean, bright white. Some of the other whites in this class have a little bit more of a green cast to them, and this one is really pure white. Had excellent trial performance in Joy's trial, large blooms, and because it's a group 3, it blooms later and has reliably long stems. There's not sort of that worry or that caution with that you have with a group 2 with planting early for long stems. In general, group 3s are later to bloom and have reliably longer stems. And this beauty is Lysadora apricot, another group 3. And again, we selected this for generally excellent trial performance and then sort of the unique look of the flower. So this one stood out in that it has a really rich apricot color, that cranberry center, and then the way the petals unfold, they sort of um, curl down and have uh, a bit more of a garden rose look to them than a lot of the Lysianthus that we've looked at. So we just really loved the color and the appearance of this one. This is a little bit of a comparison photo that Joy took from the trial, and you can see, I think it shows the richer apricot color. So Lysadora there on the right, and then another popular apricot, Lysianthus Voyage 2 light apricot, is that more softer, more antique apricot color. And you can see how full and rose-like those blooms are. And then Joy's going to talk about snapdragons.
Yes. So we have a lot of Snapdragon adds to the assortment this year, and we don't have time to go through them all, but we're discussing some of our favorites for today. Starting with this one, this is Double Frappe Light Pink. And this is an exciting new offering in the double flowering Snapdragon type. So up until recently, the Madam Butterfly series has been the only series on the market with this double flower form. And while that flower form is really desirable, the series is a little bit older. And so now there are some new varieties becoming available with improved performance. And so the double frappe light pink offers improved uniformity and flower quality, as well as earlier maturity compared to the Madam Butterfly varieties. And also, this is a completely unique color. This doesn't exist in the Madame Butterfly series. And so that, like, hopefully you can see from these photos, it's a really beautiful blend of ivory and blush tones on these blooms. So a really special color. And one other thing to note in terms of growing this variety, this is a group 2 variety. So kind of similar to what Hillary was explaining with the Lysianthus snapdragons are assigned groups by the breeder to indicate the appropriate seasonal slotting for optimal variety performance. And so the group 1, 2 snapdragons are better suited for growing in cooler conditions and lower light conditions, whereas the higher group numbers, the 3s and 4s, are better suited for warmer temperatures and longer day lengths. And so again, this is a group 2 variety. So we recommend this for like shoulder season growing or lower temperature, lower light conditions for us. That means that we're growing this in our overwintered tunnel or in an early spring, late winter, early spring tunnel planting when we're going to have a little bit shorter days and cooler temperatures. If you do choose to grow it in a high heat or high light intensity conditions, you'll still see the same flower form and color. It's just that the plants will potentially be a little shorter than desirable if it's kind of outside of that recommended slot. But again, we're excited to have this variety available now. And then we have several new varieties in the can or con series. This is a group 2, 3 series of snapdragons. So it kind of sits right in between, the ones and twos, which are for cooler growing conditions, and then the threes and fours, which are for more main season, high light, warmer temperature growing conditions. So this type of grouping can sometimes help bridge the gap between spring and summer snapdragon production. And what that really looks like for us and how we're kind of positioning these varieties is that it's really what it offers is like an earlier flowering options for main season snapdragons. So if you grow snapdragons, um, in the field or in the summer, the you're probably familiar with the Potomac series. They're a group 3, 4. These typically they offer an earlier flowering option compared to the Potomac. So it just is a way to help extend the snapdragon season a little bit. And that's one of the things that as we are building out our Snapdragon assortment, that's something that we're thinking about in terms of how to provide Snapdragons in different groups that can support people who are growing Snapdragons and or who are wanting to extend their Snapdragon season. So hopefully there are varieties available in the colors that growers need to be able to produce snaps as long as your season and infrastructure allows and your market demands. So this series, again, a little bit earlier flowering than the Potomacs. Some of the things that we appreciated about them, along with that earlier flowering, was just the consistency and the quality of the performance and the blooms with these. The colors in general flowered pretty uniformly within the series, and they consistently produced good stems and high quality blooms with nicely packed florets along those stems. And I'll just go quickly through the colors that we have available now here. On the far left is can lavender, really beautiful lavender with just such an elegant flower form. And then next to the right is can pink, then can rose, that darker kind of cherry rose color. Directly above that is can red, nice rich velvety red. And then to the left is can orange, again, a nice orange. We'll have a little bit more to say about that. And then on the far right, that large picture shows the can mix that we now have available too. So um, this mix offers, again, an earlier flowering option. If you're familiar with the Potomac mix, this will flower a little bit earlier. And another thing that distinguishes this from the Potomac mix is that this does not have, it's a little bit more of a streamlined color selection or color palette, really rich colors. So it doesn't have yellow or white or ivory in it. So that's another way that it is just a little bit different from the Potomac mix as well as the earlier flowering. And then we just wanted to kind of highlight the can orange. And you can see a close-up of the blooms on the left. This one is it's an orange, but it really leans a little bit more into the rose, that dark rose coloring, which hopefully you can see here on those unopened buds and on the throats of the blooms. It's a little bit more of orange and rose tones and less gold than like compared to Potomac orange, which has a more saturated color. And then on the right, you can see how it compares color-wise to another can variety that we added last year. Can light bronze is a much softer, almost like melon and peachy colored orange snapdragon, and can orange is just a little bit darker than that. So hopefully that's helpful in distinguishing between these varieties. And then one more Snapdragon. This is Orleans Red. This is a 3, 4 Snapdragon, so well suited for summer growing. And we're also, as we're looking at the Snapdragon assortment, we're looking for varieties that stand out for their color and that are a little bit unique. And for a red Snapdragon, this color is just a little bit different than the typical red Snapdragon. Usually red Snapdragons are a really rich velvety red. This one is a little bit lighter in color, almost a little bit more orange. It reads a little bit more brick red almost, which was interesting and also seemed like it could be a good fit for that summer growing, even summer into fall color palettes.
Great. And I just wanted to mention that we now offer pelleted seed in some of our most popular snapdragons. So I'm sure you've all faced challenges with sowing very tiny snapdragon seed. It can be hard to handle and hard to see when you're working with it. Um, and so there's a photo of what the raw seed looks like and the pelleted seed. Um, if you're using a vacuum seeder or another mechanical seeder, also having really uniform, really visible pelleted seed can be a really nice advantage. And I did want to mention that pelleted seed tends to have a shorter shelf life than raw seed. So if this is something that's going to be beneficial for you, per, don't stock up, purchase a year or a little bit more's worth at a time. And then we have one straw flower ad this year that's really, kind of again mostly notable, had good trial performance, but mostly notable for its color. It's just another color we've been trying to track down for a while. It's sort of this soft cranberry color. I think it was available at one time as it was called pomegranate. Good performance enjoys trial, very consistent with other um, straw flower varieties in the Johnny's assortment, and just this special color. I think we have yeah, here's a color comparison. So a lineup of all of our sort of purple and rose shades, and you can see cranberry rose all the way on the right, how it compares. It's very similar, almost similar to purple red all the way on the left, but several shades lighter and a little bit rosier.
All right. So this is a really fun crop to work with, and it's been exciting to see some of the energy around pansies and violas for cuts. We've been trialing these for several years in our overwintered tunnel trials, and we have a few varieties to add this year based on those trials. This first one is Rococo Frilled Mix. These really stood out for the frilled bloom form on sturdy stems. So in general, we've found that the larger flowered varieties tend to be, they produce a little fewer stems per plant than the smaller flowering varieties, like brush strokes. But the stems tend to be a little bit sturdier and thicker. So that seems like a nice trade-off. Fewer stems, but they tend to be a little sturdier. And Rococo frilled mix definitely fits that description. And what really stood out too was just the really rich color palette. You can see a lineup of some of the blooms on the left from one of the trial plots, but a lot of purple and plum and gold, cranberry and cream there. So this was a really nice variety to be able to add. This is Floral Power Plum Antique. So it's a big name for a really sweet little variety. But these are smaller blooms, 1.5 to 2 inch blooms on really abundant, productive, vigorously branching plants. We loved the flower color on these shades of lavender and purple and plum with a little bit of gold and rose coloring at the center of those blooms. Like I said, they're vigorously flowering and densely branching compared to the Rococo frilled mix. The stems are going to be a little bit thinner, but more stems per plant. And one thing that I also want to say too, just for some context on these pansy and viola varieties, is that they are not bred specifically to be used as cuts. So we grow and trial them in our overwintered tunnel and we evaluate them in the spring when the lengthening days and the increasing temperatures cause the plants to stretch and lengthen, and it kind of induces that those longer stems on those plants under those sort of specific growing conditions. So if you are growing these in a container or outside, just in a landscape space or in an open field, you are probably going to see the more compact, contained habit that these varieties were bred to have. Again, we kind of induce that longer stem length by providing some specific environmental conditions of the overwintered tunnel. So just something to consider when thinking of these for cuts.
Great. We're really excited to be able to debut some of the flowers that the Johnny's breeding team has been working on. And Lindsay's going to talk a little bit about that at the end. And Joy mentioned Shimmer Celosia. I'm going to give an introduction to three new zinnias um, that Johnny's developed. All three that I'm going to talk about were selected for large, highly double flowers, unique colors, and early flowering. Agave is a um, cactus flowered variety with really heavily quilled, large double blooms. It has this unique color palette that we've been calling sunset or desert shades. It's primarily made up of peach, gold, pink, but there's also some really special, more nuanced colors in there, like some softer pinks and buff colors. I think it's fun. This had a few pet names before it finally got its final name, and I think it's okay to mention. I think probably for 2 years we were calling it Sedona Sunset, and then Sunset Mix, and something else to do with desert. I think agave's a really nice fit, so I'm glad we ended with that one. Here's just a few more photos of what those blooms look like up close. And then we have Aurora, which is another mix, sort of in a similar color palette, but very different in that it's a dahlia shaped bloom form. It has contrasting centers that color contrast with the petal color. So purple and rose color centers. I think you can see that pretty nicely in the photo on the right. And then most of the blooms in the mix present several petal colors that give it kind of a two-tone look. And again, I think you can see that really well in that close-up photo on the right. Also, these were um, bred for cut flowers, so tall, robust plants on all three of these varieties. Here's just a few additional pictures of flower harvest, and then we got to make some fancier arrangements with some of these colors. And then finally, Ballerina, um, again, has large flowers, highly double. It is a bit of a mix in that it presents both shades of pale apricot and pale pink. And then also in terms of bloom form, there is variation from um, true dahlia form, some like semi dahlia form flowers that have kind of a flattened petal shape, and then cactus, sort of fully cactus flowered bloom form. Lindsay and her team are working on more uniform, refined versions of zinnias in this pastel color palette. But I think for right now, um, seems like growers are really happy to have this available. And so we are excited. And then I'm gonna turn it over to Lindsay, and she's gonna share just a little bit about what the team's been working on and what flower breeding and plant breeding looks like at Johnny's.
Wow, that is so amazing. I just have to interject here for a second and just thank you, Hillary and Joy. What a dazzling presentation and a lot of interesting information that you really can't know unless you've, done the trials. So thanks for sharing some of those tips. I want to just say I met Lindsay Wyatt when I was at visiting Hillary and Joy back in, I want to say 2018 or 2017, pre-COVID for sure, when I came to Maine. We had a dinner together, and I remember sitting across the table from you, Lindsay, at the dinner, and you were talking about being primarily all your research has been in the squash world. And that you've been recruited to join the flower world. And I'm just so happy to have come full circle and hear from you today. So I'll let you take over, and then we'll have some questions. Thank you so much.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here. Um, so like you've heard a little bit about today, um, we have recently started breeding flowers at Johnny's, which is a really big, exciting thing because we only have 3 plant breeders at Johnny's, so we don't breed that many crops. So really cool to add flowers on. Um, so I am part of the flower team. You can see in this photo, we also have Em and Sawyer, the 3 of us, along with Hillary and Joy, as supporting team members, are doing the flower breeding. We started a little bit with celosia in 2016 and a little bit more with zinnia in 2018. And then in 2019, we actually got permission from management to start doing flower breeding. So then we started doing a little bit more. Um, and it's kind of fun because the 3 of us are actually the squash and pumpkin breeding team. But Hillary saw some really cool opportunities in flowers, things like what eventually has become ballerina, and asked if we were interested in helping explore that vision. And we were, and we are, along with still breeding squash and pumpkins. So we're busy. And it's also pretty interesting because they have very different breeding methods. With flowers, we're breeding open pollinated varieties. With squash, we generally breed hybrids, and very different seed types and pollination methods. But it's good. We are always learning things. And so our focus in this work has been on creating varieties with new colors and flower types that haven't historically had a lot of breeding efforts. So again, things like these more subtle mixes and the pastel colors. Um, and we hope these things will be really exciting and successful for our customers because again, that they're new and we think highly desirable. And so for our flower breeding, we generally use a process called recurrent selection. So I made a little flow chart, if you will, on what that looks like in one season. And so we plant a field of just one project, or really we only have one project per species. So we'll have one zinnia and then a celosia next to it, for example, in one field. So here you're seeing a field of what has now become ballerina. And so we only have ballerina plants in that area so that there's no cross-pollination between that and other zinnia colors. Because these are all insect pollinated. We have a lot of really great native pollinators in Maine who really help us out. And so we basically select our favorite plants and save seeds from them. So we go through the field probably about 6 times throughout the growing season. So it's a lot of work, but a lot of fun just being out there with the flowers. And we kind of figure out what is our target for that project. So you can see here in the top center, we spent a lot of time really looking at nuanced shades of pink and exactly which shades of pink we want in each thing that we're working on, for example. And we look a lot at flower structure and the doubleness and plant height and the healthiness of the plants, all sorts of things. And so once we know what we want, then we know what we don't want. And so we remove the plants that we don't want, which can be upwards of 90% of them. So we
Wow.
only have, let's say 10% left in the field. Then what we do, you can kind of see in the third photo, is we cut back everything that's remaining. We usually do that in July. And so that's so we can have a fresh start for all pollination to happen. So then we let new flowers open and they're insect pollinated, again, just within that isolation and just within our selected plants. And that's how we move forward and improve the genetics every generation is by selecting and then cutting back and then just letting the insects pollinate. And so then we harvest that seed after we let it mature. So you can see that in the last photo there, one of our seed crops drying in the greenhouse. And then we do it again the next year. And basically, we keep doing it year after year until it's good enough. And so that's kind of touches on what Hillary mentioned about ballerina is we have visions for more refined versions of ballerina in the long term, but we thought that as it is right now, it's really great. And I think is something that isn't really available already. And so we want to share it as soon as we can. And then you can keep an eye out for new things coming. And so to finish out my section of the presentation, I have just a series of photos for a little behind the scenes work. So on the left, this is in 2019. There's Hillary with what became agave. That was kind of where we were saying, ooh, look at these sunset colors and what could we do with this? And then is a couple years later. So you could see it kind of all scales up year after year, and then we can get more refined in our selections. So Hillary was kind of there visioning what we wanted our color palette to be in our ideal version of agave. Okay, you can go to the next slide. So again, we do a lot of nuanced color comparisons. So here on the left in the zinnias, we're comparing a commercial check with a ballerina. This is a version of ballerina from a few years ago, but basically we wanted to assure ourselves that we were bringing in a new color palette with ballerina and that it was actually paler and a more blush color than what was available on the market. And then on the right, you can see all of the different colors that can show up in shimmer. And again, we were trying to kind of figure out what to call them all and how to break them into categories. And then with a goal of figuring out how to curate shimmer to be the nicest color palette that we could. The next slide. And here's a few selection photos in action. So I had mentioned that we, pull out all of the plants that aren't good enough so that we don't save seed from them. And so on the left is Aurora, one of our big years. You can see how many plants there are. I think it was, what, four big beds. And then on the right is a shimmer breeding cycle. I think that may have been either 2019 or 2020. This is 2 other years of Aurora, and I thought it was just kind of fun to show some scale. So on the left, you can see with us wearing our masks, that's Em and Hillary. That's 2020, and you can see how it's just one bed and maybe not even a full bed of Aurora at that point because we had just started creating it. And then the one on the right, I think, is the year later. So we kind of moved into a pollination cage. So if we don't have enough field isolations, we can also use these net cages that we put bumblebees in so that we can grow a lot of different zinnias near each other, but still not have that cross-pollination. And then the next year, it was actually the previous slide, but we moved up to a whole big field. So if you go to the next slide, Hillary, there's an example of a big production field. So this is ballerina work in progress. Again, you can see how there's little kind of clumps of plants, and it used to be a continuous row, but we have removed a lot of plants that were not quite fitting our standards so that we could do the best we possibly could in what we then share with you all. So yeah, I think that was everything I had to share, and happy to answer questions along with Joy and Hillary.
Oh my gosh, that is so exciting. Oh, okay. First of all, I have to say, This is a patient woman's game because all of you have been working on this for over 5 years. And how do you resist well, I see that there's an arc because you're still hinting that maybe there'll be more refinement in some of these categories. So this must have been a banner year for you to know that you could introduce your new introductions.
We've had a lot of celebrating. We had a sunset dinner. We gave each other gifts all kind of spontaneously to commemorate the occasion. It's been really, really special and exciting for our
Well,
team.
huge congratulations, and I feel like a proprietary sense of affection for all of you to that you're sharing it with us for the Slow Flowers community. Um, I'm going to jump into some questions if that's okay, and comments. Kim Bryan says, "I've always wondered how to quote unquote control the pollination without using tunnels. This makes all sorts of sense. Thank you for the explanation." And I do think that's like we want to know this behind the curtain kind of um, troubleshooting you're doing. Is this the kind of breeding that would happen in other crops, or is it specific to flowers?
Not all crops, but a lot of crops. So that's how, oh, for example, carrots and onions, they use those pollination cages a lot. Swiss chard, um, is basically wind pollinated. So as long as it's far enough away from other Swiss chards so that the pollen doesn't blow between the fields. Um, when we breed squash, we do every single seed that we save is from a hand pollination because
Wow.
um well, you could breed it like flowers, but we grow so many different kinds of squash, we don't have that many fields. So,
Yeah. I love it. I love it. Okay, another question from Rachel. This is for Joy or Hillary. She says, I'm in zone 6B, but we get extremely hot, dry, and sunny summers. I think she's east of the Cascades in Washington State. She's looking for exceptional flower varieties that tolerate the heat of our summers. I'm wondering if some of the ones you've showed us today, uh, maybe Joy or Hillary, the celosia or the snaps would fit into that category.
Yeah, I'll jump in and then Hillary, you can add a few, but I would say definitely the celosias. Celosias are a heat-loving crop, and so those are definitely a good option if you are dealing with hotter, drier conditions. They really honestly thrive. Sometimes um, we see, for us growing in Maine and northern cooler climates, they sometimes we have better performance in like summer tunnels even than, they just really seem to thrive on the heat. So definitely those should be a good option. I think in addition, let's see, snapdragons can be a little bit challenging in the heat.
Okay.
I think that one thing I want to clarify too about the grouping of snapdragons, the 1 through 4, that doesn't necessarily, snapdragons are a cool loving crop. They don't, just because it's a group 4 doesn't mean it's going to have more heat tolerance, if that makes sense. It's going
That
to,
was my mistake. Yeah.
so,
Thank you for clarifying that.
but no, that's a like, it's a confusing terminology around all the groups and everything. So,
I'm Joy, correct me. I mean, a lot of the warm season annuals um, are just really common ones for the heat of the summer. I know all plants need water, so drought is really challenging, but sunflowers do pretty well in the heat, strawflower, um, all
Yeah.
those.
Okay. Those are good guys to get started with. Kate Skelton of Gratitude Flowers says, how does the Can series compare to the Costa series in terms of bloom time?
Great question. So the Can series is a little bit, it's a 2-3. The Costa series is a group 2. So the Can series will flower a little bit later than the Costa series. Um, One other thing that should be noted, we didn't really touch on this today, but we have information on the web and you'll be seeing this from other places too. But the Costa series has been renamed as the Avignon series. So that includes some really popular Costa varieties like Costa Silver and Costa Apricot. They're now called Avignon. So, but that what I just said still holds too. The Avignon series, it's a Group 2 series for late winter, early spring production, and then the Can series will flower just a little bit later. And when they're grown side by side.
Mm, that's great. You
Mm.
want to add anything, Hillary or
Yeah,
Lindsay?
just to reiterate everything Joy's been saying about groups and what I tried to say about Lysianthus groups. Um, the the con later blooming also it's gonna have within the warmer, longer days, it's gonna have maintain the good bloom quality and stem length.
Okay, great. A couple comments and questions in the chat about color palettes. I think everyone wants to know, what does Johnny's think of mocha mousse? And you were going heavy into pale pink, which we love, but were you shocked with that color palette? And what is in your catalog that you can raise a flag and say, we're in this party too. We have mocha mousse.
Well, I mean I like it. I think it's kind of a polarizing color, right? Like you hear both really positive and negative things about brown flowers, but I don't we did have one really nice new ad this year in that color palette, but I didn't talk about it because I deleted the slide because we just have a little bit of seed. But there's
Well,
a
you can
cute
tell us the name,
okay,
right?
all right. There's a cute it's on the website. You can look at it now if you're looking around. It's a cute little Lysianthus called Puccino Coco, and it's a single flower, rosy brown petals, and it has that uh, cranberry center. Super cute, reflexed. There's been some, I think I've seen it on Instagram, reflex petals a few
Mm.
times from different
Okay,
sources.
so Puccina Coco.
Puccino Coco.
Okay, so everyone here, go order it because we're not going to air this replay until next week. So you've got your chance.
You have 7
Um,
days.
And if you're,
exactly.
yeah, if you're familiar with, for Lysianthus, if you're familiar with like the Roseanne series, the Roseanne Brown and Roseanne Terracotta, this kind of, the Pacino Coco kind of falls in a similar color range as those, but with just a little bit of a different flower form. So definitely hits at that mocha mousse palette. And
Good.
those other two Lysianthus varieties are probably good options for that range as well.
Good. Good. Well, I mean, Lindsay can't be like the person who responds quickly because she takes 5 or 6 years to respond. So we're going to let you off the hook on that color palette. But speaking of the Lysianthus, there's been a little bit of chat about wedding trends of requests for white and green weddings, and Roseanne green Lysianthus was a suggested. But do you have any other kind of green flowers that come to mind that you would want to suggest people check out? Like green chartreuse range, so that people aren't just doing white flowers with green foliage.
Yeah, that's
Depends
a
on the
good.
time of year, because I mean, tulips can be, you can get a green tulip, right?
Right. Yeah, there's like lots of yeah, tulips if you're, if that's the your season that you're looking at, there are a lot of interesting um white parrot or super parrot is a tulip that comes to mind that has both white and green coloring on it. But if that's not the season that your weddings are in, then some other in addition to the Lysianthus, both white and green options for main summer growing seasons, there are some lime and white zinnias in both the larger flowering Benares and then the
Mm,
smaller Oklahoma series that are good options. Another nice, this is a little bit more of like a sparkly filler type, but Matricaria or feverfew can have those little white, kind of almost daisy-like, or the magic lime green. Matricaria is another really nice one to kind of help fill out in that color palette as well.
good job, Joy, on the spot. We also have like a little I'll put it in the chat. We have a page on the website where you can sort flowers by color.
That's
So
right.
if
That's
you're
a great
looking,
tool.
yeah, if you're looking for a particular color, that's a really good way to just kind of window
Yeah.
shop.
Well, we have one more question from Kate Skelton, and then I've got a final question. So, and then we'll wrap up. Her question is, I'd love to ask your experience of viability for storage for pelleted Lysianthus series. With optimal storage, how many years should we expect high viability? This is maybe relating to the other comment about pelleted seeds.
Yeah. I'm gonna say by the book, probably like 1 year. Really, you should maybe just plan for a year or two max. But Joy has a lot of practical experience with trying to recycle Lysiantha seed from years past, so she could say a little bit more about how she manages that, I think.
Yeah, I would agree with Hillary in that, like, when I'm planning a trial, if I really am depending on that Lysiantha seed, then I want to make sure I'm using fresh seed. But if for some reason I can't get a variety or I'm digging back through, a couple of years of samples, I still have had success germinating older Lysiantha seed samples. But what I may see is like a decline in the rate of germination or success for that. Like it does seem like it falls off. So if you're really depending on it, then fresh seed is probably the way to go. But at the same time, if it's a variety you love or you've held on to seed, there may still be, you may still be able to get some seed out of that, especially if you're, being careful of how you're storing it. So
Mm,
Yeah.
that's
And what,
yeah.
helpful.
yeah, one thing you can do instead of seeding it out in a whole tray and having a lot of skips in your transplants is to seed it into an open flat and then transplant those ones that do germinate into your plug tray or soil blocks or whatever you use.
That's a great suggestion. Okay, my final question is, and I think well, I'll start with Lindsay, but I want Joy and Hillary's thoughts too. Um, like the Celosia Shimmer Mix, I cannot believe the range of colors in that. It's just mind-blowing. And I get the name because you're getting that nuance of subtlety of change in the spectrum. Is that the best way to go forward with that with Celosia to keep the mix, or will you eventually select out a specific groovy color and let it be its own crop? Or is that just really hard to do with something as nuanced as that mixed palette that you have?
Good question. I think both have really great opportunities, the mixes and single colors. I think there are some colors, like some of the really sophisticated colors in shimmer and in aurora and agave that I
Mm,
think might not be able to be bred into a single color variety. So that's
mhm.
where I think the mixes, in addition to just being a nice mix, with the range of
Really
colors,
pretty. Yeah.
you can have colors show up that you might not be able to get a different way. Um, but yeah, we definitely see the utility of single color varieties, of course, and yeah, we'll be looking towards that as well in our future breeding work.
Great. Great. I think I can see where the mix with the open pollination is just a little bit easier to manage than really trying to segregate just one juicy apricot
No,
solution.
I think Lindsay hit it, that we recognize that mixes aren't for everyone and present challenges for growers who are trying to sell a color. But the reason that we move forward with the breeding work on those the way we did is because that the genetic mixing that's happening in the field, that's how we're getting some of those really special colors.
Mm, mm.
So, and
Like
I think,
artists, you're artists with your palette. I love it.
yeah,
And that makes it really fun to grow because you can discover new, unique, special plants. When you grow Aurora, and I'll be walking down the bed and be like, oh my goodness, this is my new favorite one. And then you walk a few more feet and oh, this one's so beautiful. And having that diversity in a way that is a little bit more rare and special is really fun. All within the same cohesive set of tones.
Mm. All right. Well, I think I want to come along on that tour with you, all three of you, and see how you nerd out about these amazing flowers that you're getting to work with and then sharing with us. Thank you so much. I'm sure there's more to come for when we do this again in a year to find out what you're announcing for 2026. I know you've got a lot on your plate, so this has been really an excellent session and everybody's enjoying it so much. So happy holidays, everyone, and get ready for the new year. And I will see you all very soon. Please reach out if you have any questions. But this was extremely beneficial, and we'll share all the resources in the notes for the podcast next week as well. Take care, everybody. Happy holidays.